Have you ever felt guilty for wanting to be alone? Maybe your friends invite you out, but deep down, all you want is to stay home in silence. Or maybe you love being around people, but after a while, you feel drained and need to recharge alone. Here's the truth. Solitude is not a weakness. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you. In fact, according to psychology and the deep insights of Carl Jung, solitude is one of the most important keys to mental health, creativity, and self-discovery. But why is it so powerful? And why do we live in a world that often sees solitude as strange, dangerous, or even unhealthy? In this video, we're going to dive deep into these questions. Together, we'll explore why solitude is essential for mental health, what Jung's perspective reveals about being alone, how solitude helps you build authenticity and inner strength, real-life examples of solitude shaping creativity and personal growth, and finally, how you can use solitude wisely without falling into loneliness. So, if you've ever wondered whether your need for solitude is a flaw or a gift, stay with me. By the end of this video, you may see solitude as one of the greatest tools you'll ever have for living a healthy and meaningful life. Part 1. What solitude really means. Let's start with a simple but important question. What is solitude? Most people confuse solitude with loneliness, but they're not the same. Loneliness is the pain of being disconnected. It feels like emptiness, like nobody sees you or cares about you. It's passive. You don't choose it, it happens to you. Solitude, on the other hand, is chosen. It's the space you intentionally create to connect with yourself. It's not about rejection from the world, it's about retreating from the noise of the world to find clarity inside. Think of solitude as a reset button for your mind. Just as your phone needs to recharge, your soul needs moments of silence and distance from constant interaction. Carl Jung believed that we all have a deep inner world, and solitude is the gateway to it. Without moments of stillness, we can't truly hear our own thoughts, emotions, and desires. Here's a simple example. Imagine spending your whole day scrolling on social media. You're bombarded with thousands of opinions, images, and voices. By the end, you're exhausted, not because you worked hard, but because your mind never had a chance to breathe. Solitude is like finally turning off all the notifications and just sitting with yourself. It allows you to ask, what do I really think? What do I really feel? What do I actually want? Part 2. Why solitude is essential for mental health. So, why is solitude so essential? Let's break it down into 3 main reasons. 1. Solitude helps you process emotions. When you're always surrounded by people, it's easy to ignore your feelings. Maybe you distract yourself with conversations, activities, or entertainment. But in solitude, you can no longer run away. You're faced with your inner world, the joy, the sadness, the unresolved pain. And here's the powerful part. Only by facing those emotions can you heal them. For example, after a breakup, many people rush to fill the silence with noise, hanging out nonstop, distracting themselves, jumping into new relationships. But the real healing often happens in solitude, when you finally sit with the sadness, reflect on what happened, and learn what you need for the future. 2. Solitude strengthens your identity. Jung often emphasized the process of individuation, becoming your true self, not just the mask you wear for others. To do that, you need time away from external expectations. When you're alone, nobody is telling you how to dress, what to think, or who you should be. You're free to explore your authentic self. Think of solitude as the workshop, where your true identity is built. Without it, you risk living your whole life according to the scripts written by others, your family, your culture, your friends, without ever asking, but who am I really? 3. Solitude recharges your mental energy. Modern psychology recognizes something Jung knew long ago. We all need energy management. Social life, while wonderful, can drain us. Even the most extroverted people need moments of retreat. Without solitude, burnout becomes inevitable. Think about introverts. You probably know someone who loves people but gets drained after too much interaction. That's because solitude isn't just about being alone, it's about recharging your energy, just like sleep recharges your body. So, solitude is not an escape from life, it's a preparation for life. It makes you stronger, clearer, and more resilient. Part 3. Everyday examples of the power of solitude. Let's make this practical. Writers and artists often seek solitude to create. Think about how many great novels, paintings, or musical masterpieces were born in quiet rooms where the creator was alone with their thoughts. Solitude is the birthplace of creativity. Thinkers and philosophers across history used solitude to develop their most powerful ideas. They understood that wisdom doesn't usually come from noise, but from silence. Everyday life. Imagine you've had a stressful day at work. Instead of going straight into another social activity, you take 30 minutes to sit alone in your room, write in a journal, or just breathe. That short moment of solitude can completely reset your mental state and help you show up better for others later. In other words, solitude is not just for philosophers or artists, it's for everyone. Part 4. Cultural and analytical perspective. Now let's zoom out and analyze this from a broader lens. We live in a culture that fears solitude. Think about it. When someone is alone at a cafe, people might whisper, "Oh, poor thing, they must be lonely." But why? Why do we assume being alone is negative? Part of it comes from consumer culture. If you're alone, you're harder to sell to. If you're not constantly connected, you're not constantly consuming. Companies thrive on keeping us distracted and dependent. Solitude threatens that system because it empowers us to be self-sufficient. From a Jungian perspective, solitude also connects to archetypes. The hermit archetype, for example, represents wisdom, retreat, and self-discovery. Every culture has stories of wise figures who retreat into solitude, monks, shamans, philosophers, only to return with deeper insight for the community. This shows that solitude isn't selfish. It's actually a service to life. When you return from solitude, you're more balanced, clearer, and more capable of giving. Compare this to modern psychology. Today, mindfulness and meditation are celebrated as tools for mental health. But aren't they just structured forms of solitude? Sitting quietly, focusing inward, disconnecting from external noise. This is the same wisdom Jung pointed to. Closing part 1. So far, we've seen that solitude is not loneliness, but a powerful space for emotional healing, identity formation, and energy renewal. It's also deeply misunderstood in our modern culture, which often confuses being alone with being broken. But solitude is not about being broken, it's about becoming whole. In the next part of this video, we'll dive deeper into how solitude shapes creativity, relationships, and self-mastery. And we'll also explore the dangers of ignoring solitude, why constant distraction might be the real mental health crisis of our time. Before we continue, I'd look to ask you, do you see solitude as a gift or a burden in your life? Comment below, I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you're finding this video insightful so far, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell. It really helps support the channel and keeps this kind of deep content alive. Part 5. Solitude and creativity. One of the most fascinating aspects of solitude is how it unlocks creativity. When you're alone, your mind is free from constant external input. You're not reacting to conversations, notifications, or distractions. Instead, your thoughts can wander, connect, and give birth to new ideas. Carl Jung himself often emphasized the importance of retreat. He built a tower on the shores of Lake Zurich, a place where he could be alone, reflect, and let his inner world speak. For him, solitude wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. And it's not just Jung. Virginia Woolf wrote in A Room of One's Own that every creator needs space and solitude to produce meaningful work. Nikola Tesla often credited his breakthroughs to long hours spent alone, visualizing ideas in his mind. Even modern tech leaders like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk have shared how retreating into silence helped them shape visionary projects. Think about it in your own life. Have you ever noticed that your best ideas often come in the shower, during a walk alone, or late at night when everything is quiet? That's solitude at work. Creativity thrives when your brain has space to breathe. But here's the key: solitude doesn't just create new ideas, it helps you refine them. Social interaction can inspire, but solitude shapes and polishes. Without it, your ideas risk being shallow, influenced too much by others' expectations. Part 6: Solitude and Relationships. Now let's talk about something that might sound strange at first. Solitude makes your relationships better. How? Because when you know yourself deeply, you bring more authenticity into your connections. Many relationships fail because people project their unmet needs onto others. They expect their partner, family, or friends to fill every void inside them. But solitude teaches you to face those voids yourself. For example, if you always fear being abandoned, solitude gives you the space to sit with that fear and understand where it comes from. Then, when you enter a relationship, you're less likely to cling or control. If you're constantly seeking validation, solitude forces you to ask, why do I need external approval? What would it mean to validate myself? When you emerge from solitude, you relate to others from a place of strength, not desperation. This doesn't mean solitude replaces relationships, far from it. It means solitude complements them. By balancing time alone and time with others, you create healthier bonds. And here's the paradox: the more comfortable you are being alone, the more magnetic you become in relationships. People sense that you're not needy, that you have an inner life, and that makes you deeply attractive. Part 7: The Dangers of Avoiding Solitude. Now let's flip the coin. What happens if we avoid solitude altogether? This is a crucial question because modern society often pushes us to do exactly that. With endless entertainment, social media, and constant busyness, solitude becomes rare. But avoiding it has real consequences. Shallow identity. If you never sit with yourself, your personality becomes a collage of others' opinions. You become who your friends, family, or culture want you to be, not who you truly are. Unprocessed emotions. Without solitude, unresolved pain lingers in the background. It shows up as anxiety, stress, or projection onto others. Think of people who explode in anger without knowing why. That's often bottled up feelings they've never faced alone. Burnout. Social overstimulation can lead to mental exhaustion. When you don't give your mind rest, it eventually forces you to stop, often in the form of breakdowns or illness. Addiction to distraction. Many people fear solitude so much that they drown themselves in noise, constant scrolling, binge watching, or just talking to avoid silence. But this only makes the inner world more alien and frightening. Jung warned about this danger in his own way. The unconscious doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. If you don't face it in solitude, it will erupt in your life through anxiety, depression, or destructive behavior. In short, avoiding solitude is like refusing to clean your house. The mess doesn't go away, it just grows until you can't ignore it anymore. Part 8: Solitude and Master Self. Let's go deeper into Jung's framework. One of his most important ideas is individuation, the journey of becoming your true self by integrating all aspects of your personality, including the shadow, the parts of yourself you usually reject or hide. Guess where individuation often begins? That's right, in solitude. Because in solitude, the masks drop. You're not performing for anyone. You're confronted with the raw truth of yourself, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And while that can be uncomfortable, it's also liberating. When you face your shadow in solitude, you stop being controlled by it unconsciously. For example, if you realize in solitude that you're envious of others' success, you can explore why.
Maybe it shows you your own unlived potential. If you realize you're deeply afraid of failure, you can reflect on where that fear comes from instead of letting it secretly dictate your choices. This is what Jung meant when he spoke about the value of inner work. Solitude isn't about isolating yourself from life. It's about preparing yourself to live more fully, with clarity and wholeness. Part 9. Cultural and archetypal comparisons. To understand solitude more deeply, let's look across cultures. In Eastern traditions like Buddhism, solitude is central. Monks retreat to monasteries or mountains to meditate for years, believing silence reveals the truth of the mind. In Christianity, the Desert Fathers retreated into the wilderness, seeking solitude as a path to spiritual purification. Indigenous shamans often undergo vision quests, spending days alone in nature to encounter their inner visions and guide their community. What do all these examples have in common? They show that solitude is not about escaping life. It's about preparing for it. It's about accessing wisdom and strength that can only be found within. And here's something fascinating. In mythology, we often see the hero's journey include a stage of solitude. The hero retreats, faces trials alone, and then returns transformed. From Jesus fasting in the desert to Buddha under the Bodhi tree, solitude is the turning point of transformation. This aligns perfectly with Jung's archetypal psychology. Solitude is not random, it's archetypal. It's part of the universal pattern of human growth. Time point. Practical ways to use solitude. So, how can we apply all of this in our daily lives? Here are some practical steps. Create small rituals of solitude. You don't need to retreat to a mountain. Start with 10 minutes of quiet reflection each day. No phone, no distractions. Just you and your thoughts. Journal your inner world. Writing is a powerful tool for solitude. It turns vague emotions into clear words, helping you process and understand yourself. Spend time in nature. Even a walk in the park without headphones can recharge you. Nature provides a natural mirror for solitude. Meditation and mindfulness. These practices are structured solitude. They help you train your mind to be comfortable with silence. Balance solitude and connection. Too much solitude can turn into isolation, which harms mental health. The key is balance. Enough solitude to recharge, enough connection to stay grounded in the human community. Use solitude to face discomfort. Don't just use solitude for relaxation. Use it to face uncomfortable truths. Ask yourself, what am I avoiding? What does my silence reveal? When you do this, solitude stops being empty time and becomes transformational time. Closing part 2. We've now explored how solitude fuels creativity, strengthens relationships, and protects us from the dangers of constant distraction. We've also seen how solitude is deeply connected to individuation, self-mastery, and cultural wisdom across the world. But here's the question. What happens when solitude is misunderstood or misused? Can solitude turn dark? And how can we walk the fine line between healthy retreat and harmful isolation? That's what we'll uncover in the final part of this video. We'll explore the shadow side of solitude, how to avoid its traps, and how to embrace solitude as a lifelong ally for mental health and meaning. Before moving on, let me ask you, do you already practice solitude in your daily life? If so, what's your favorite way? Journaling, meditation, nature walks, or something else? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your experiences.
Part 11. The shadow side of solitude. Up to now, we've explored the many benefits of solitude. But like any powerful tool, it has a shadow side. Solitude can easily tip into isolation, which is very different. Healthy solitude is chosen. It's intentional, purposeful, and balanced with relationships. Unhealthy isolation, on the other hand, is often forced or unconscious. It's when loneliness hardens into disconnection, bitterness, or despair. Here are some risks of misused solitude. Escapism. Sometimes people retreat into solitude not for growth, but to avoid life. For example, avoiding relationships because of fear of rejection, or avoiding responsibilities under the excuse of needing space. Loneliness. Prolonged solitude without connection can make us feel invisible or forgotten. Studies show chronic loneliness can be as harmful to health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Echo chambers of the mind. Too much solitude can make you stuck in repetitive thoughts. Instead of clarity, you end up trapped in cycles of overthinking. Loss of empathy. If solitude isn't balanced, you may lose touch with others' realities. Human beings need relationships to stay emotionally grounded. Carl Jung himself warned that diving too deep into the unconscious without grounding and community can become dangerous. You risk getting lost in your inner world, disconnected from shared reality. That's why it's so important to distinguish solitude as self-renewal versus isolation as self-destruction. Part 12. Finding the balance. So, how do we walk the fine line between solitude and connection? The answer lies in balance. Think of solitude like sleep. Too little and you're exhausted. Too much and you become sluggish. The same goes for solitude. Here are a few principles to keep in mind. Solitude should energize you. If your alone time leaves you calmer, clearer, and more centered, it's healthy. If it leaves you drained or bitter, you may be slipping into isolation. Alternate solitude with connection. Spend time alone to know yourself, but share your insights with trusted friends or communities. This creates a rhythm of reflection and expression. Listen to your inner signals. Sometimes your body and emotions tell you what you need. Restlessness may signal you need solitude. Loneliness may signal you need connection. Don't romanticize solitude. It's powerful, but it's not the whole answer to life's struggles. We are social beings. Even Jung emphasized that individuation happens in relationship to others as well as in solitude. Part 13. Solitude as resistance in the modern world. Let's zoom out and look at solitude in today's cultural context. In our hyper-connected, fast-paced, attention-hungry world, solitude has become almost a form of resistance. Choosing solitude is like reclaiming your own mind from the endless demands of society. Social media constantly pulls us outward. Likes, comments, comparisons. Solitude pulls us inward, where true worth isn't measured in numbers. Consumer culture thrives on distraction. Solitude, on the other hand, makes us question, do I really need this, or am I filling a void? Work culture often glorifies busyness, but solitude reminds us that rest, reflection, and silence are just as productive in the long run. In this sense, solitude isn't just personal, it's cultural. It's almost rebellious. To sit quietly, think deeply, and resist constant stimulation is to reclaim your humanity in a world that profits from your distraction. Part 14. Everyday examples of solitude in action. Let's bring this down to everyday life. What does healthy solitude look like in practice? A student turning off their phone to spend 30 minutes journaling before exams, gaining clarity and reducing anxiety. A busy parent taking a solo walk after dinner, not to escape family, but to recharge and return more present. An artist spending a weekend retreat in nature, sketching and reflecting to fuel new inspiration. A professional blocking out quiet time each morning before diving into emails, creating space to set intentions for the day. None of these examples require dramatic isolation. They're small but intentional practices of solitude. And over time, they build resilience, creativity, and mental health. Part 15. Solitude and the larger human journey. Here's something profound to consider. Solitude isn't just a personal choice. It's part of the larger human journey. Think of it this way. Every major transformation in life involves some kind of solitude. Birth, we enter the world alone. Death, we leave the world alone. Growth, the deepest insights often come in moments when we are alone with ourselves. Jung believed that solitude was not an accident, but a necessity of individuation, the process of becoming whole. To avoid solitude is to avoid yourself, and to embrace solitude is to embrace the full mystery of being human. So, solitude isn't just about mental health, it's about meaning. It's about living a life that feels authentically yours. And here's something personal. For me, solitude hasn't always been easy. At times it felt uncomfortable, even painful. Like many people, I used to reach for my phone the moment silence appeared. But the more I leaned into solitude, the more I realized it was teaching me something I couldn't learn anywhere else. It taught me that silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. It taught me that the fears I was running from were actually guides. And it taught me that knowing myself is the foundation of everything else in life. So when I speak about solitude, I'm not talking from theory alone. I'm talking from lived experience. And I believe this is something we can all cultivate, little by little. Part 17. Conclusion and Call to Action. So let's bring everything together. We've seen that solitude is not about isolation, but about renewal. It fuels creativity, deepens relationships, prevents burnout, and connects us to the unconscious. Across cultures, religions, and archetypes, solitude has always been the ground of transformation. But we've also seen its shadow. Solitude can turn harmful if it becomes an escape or a prison. The key is balance. Solitude for growth, connection for grounding. Carl Jung's insight and my own belief is this. Solitude is not optional for mental health. It's essential. Because without it, you never truly meet yourself. And if you never meet yourself, you live half a life. So here's my question for you. What role does solitude play in your own life? Do you embrace it, fear it, or avoid it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this video gave you something to think about, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps this channel grow and keeps these conversations alive. Remember, solitude is not about being alone. It's about coming home to yourself. And that, I believe, is one of the greatest journeys we can ever take. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.